So I'm going to talk about stuff to do with Facebook Connect, but also about social responsibility projects, which I think are getting hotter this year, especially as we're seeing some of the advertising industry collapse quite badly. I think lots of very bright minds will be doing something slightly more interesting than they were last year. So this was a slide actually from last year. So this is Tim O'Reilly talking at Web 2.0, and he says, how can we use this technology to solve real-world problems? There's been a lot of focus on consumer applications like throwing sheep. And if you look at the Obama campaign, which I think we can probably all say was a bit of a success, they used lots of social media, and they used lots of crowdsourcing applications to find out what the people of America actually wanted them to do. And so there's this big movement growing up at the moment about what you can do with social democracy, and actually what happened today with Gordon Brown going back on this whole sort of blocking MPs' expenses is sort of proof of what you can actually do when you start organising social protest. One particular thing that's been going on in London of late, it's been going on for about a year now, is a thing called Social Innovation Camp. And what Social Innovation Camp is, it's a sort of 2-day hackathon where everyone turns up bright and happy on the Saturday morning, and they all get their teams and their projects, and 2 days later, completely broken, normally with the flu, they come up with something working. It demolished about half of London's new media industry this year. We all look pretty rough the next day. And the project that I worked on there is a thing called Access City, where a team of 6 of us built this in 2 days. And what is it? This image sort of shows things perfectly. This is Bethnal Green Tube Station, which was near where Social Innovation Camp was. And if you imagine a situation where you're disabled or you're asthmatic or you've got a pram or you've got kids and you've looked at an accessibility map and you say, okay, that would be a really good tube station, I'll go there, and then you discover the lift's broken. How can we fix this problem? TfL doesn't give you real-time information. They can't measure it. God knows why, but they can't. And it goes beyond tube station. It goes into buildings and shops and restaurants and major public places. And we think we can fix this through crowdsourcing, so having lots and lots of people going around reporting what the problems are on a microscopic level. And this was the prototype we built in 2 days. We built an API so that actually we could have different clients. So in a weekend we had one person building the main API, we had another person building the website. I built 4 clients in a weekend. We had an email client, SMS client, something that can take in stuff from an iPhone, and we had a MySpace app as well. Didn't work on a Facebook app over the weekend, but we've done lots of stuff on that since. So what happens? Well, people can either input videos about problems at tube stations, they can put images in from Flickr. We're using lots of stuff like OEmbed, which is a really nice open source library. Or they can just sort of send an SMS in, or they can send an email in saying, this is a problem. It doesn't have to be much text. It could be something like ice on steps that could actually save somebody from slipping. So what do you need for crowdsourcing? Well, you need people, and you need lots of them. You need them to be all over the area that you're doing it, or else you're not going to get a decent amount of coverage. So where do you get these people? This was a sort of thing that was on a blog for a company called JanRain, which I'll talk about in a minute. They have an interesting identity broker. And this was for one particular site that's included their identity broker so far about where their audience comes from. And they're not actually using an internal authentication mechanism. They don't have a user database, as most sites do. They just use all of these different connected, distributed IDs. And so you could see that actually if you've got Facebook and you've got MySpace and you've got Google, then you've got something like, what, 70, 80%? And that's pretty good of all of the population out there. So you don't really need to build your own authentication system anymore with this distributed social graph. So what we've done so far, we didn't go down the JanRain solution, but I'll talk about that in a minute. We took App Engine as our initial platform because you get the Gmail stuff for free, so you can log in using your Gmail account. We had to do a bit of tweakery for that. But we really were interested in Facebook. So why use distributed ID? Well, building registration systems is unpleasant. It's probably the least favourite task of any of us in the room. Registering for sites isn't good. And actually, when you're using your real identity, there's some early evidence that says there's less likely to be spam in comments and stuff like that. People aren't going to, put a picture of a cock in instead of a picture of a tube station. There's less worry there. Because they'll be found out and you know who they are. It's great. And you know who their friends are, so you just send it to them. What are the benefits? Well, if the toolkits are good, it's really quick and simple to do. And actually one of the really great things is you can surface their activity on your site onto the newsfeed. I don't need to tell you guys about that. It's really, really important. And increasingly important is this whole idea of friend graph recognition. So knowing whose friends are where and then sort of suggesting that they get them involved as well. So I talked a bit about our different access methods. So we've got APIs. We're building a Facebook app at the moment. We've got mobile phone, iPhone app, MySpace, email from BlackBerry. Not everything that you want is actually within things like the Gmail account that you can get from there or in the Facebook Connect thing. So what we did was we built a little user object which stores some things. So it stores a user property, which is how you reference Gmail. Then you've got a network ID, which is their Facebook ID, and then which network they're on. We're going to extend it so you can be on multiple networks at the same time and still be a user. And then we give you a profile ID so that people can go and see what you've contributed to Access City. For the geeks of you, there are no filters in App Engine, so you can't put an authentication filter in front. So we did a bit of hackery to build one that deals with pretty much any authentication system we can think of. And obviously you've got to have some code in there that works out whether or not they're coming in through Google or coming in through Facebook. And so you'll start seeing, anyway, you see the FB colon, that's where we're using FBML to bring in profile pics and profile information. And all of that is done client-side through the JavaScript library and the FBML rendering. We also did some stuff where their activities on the site can be pushed to their newsfeed. So you can start surfacing things like, so-and-so has reported that the lift is out at Bank Station. And that will then automatically be on their newsfeed, all their friends will see it. Maybe some of them are using the same station, it's kind of useful. But it has this idea of you're seeing people who are doing something good and maybe you want to do it as well. That's one of the big things that we're into. So the main site was built in 2 days. How long did the FB Connect stuff take? Well, actually getting Gmail and FB Connect working together in this sort of authentication system actually took an hour. That was an hour of me sitting coding. The feed integration and logic and the templates to put stuff into the news feed was about 2 hours. And actually quite a lot of that was building the damn feed templates, which are ugly as hell to build. Really horrible interface for putting them in. And how was it so quick? Well, actually tutorials. So really, really great tutorials. There's 2 videos. It will take you 20 minutes to watch them. They won't quite change your life, but actually they'll make the whole process a lot easier, and you can see what code's being typed. So what are the alternatives? Well, there's this thing called JaneRain, which somebody's described as Switzerland for identity, where it does distributed identity for AOL, Facebook, Google, MySpace, Yahoo, OpenID. It's kind of interesting. It acts as a sort of a third-party proxy for identity. It's okay, but it doesn't do some interesting stuff. So it doesn't do anything to do with activity stream integration. Doesn't put anything, doesn't take anything from the profile. So if you want to get information about that user, you can't get it. So it just acts as a simple identity broker. And you're in bed with a third party and you don't know how they're going to do in terms of their business model. And it costs money. And since we're doing a nice sort of social startup, we didn't really want to pay for it. So we feel that the 3 hours was actually money well spent on our side. So at the moment we've got a coding team of 2 of us working a day per week. We'll be launching in February. We've already got partnerships lining up with the Mayor's office. We're really interested in what we're doing, and Transport for London now, basically because we sort of bludgeoned them a bit and said, you aren't doing this and people might die. And they somehow bought some of it. And so these are the people who hacked with us at Social Innovation Camp, because we ought to mention it's a team effort. And if any of you have got time, there's going to be another one late summer. It's lots and lots of fun. They do have beer and they feed you really, really well. And you really feel at the end of the weekend that you've done something really, really good.